The story begins by showing a blonde-haired woman known as Mi Rae. That morning, Mi Rae woke up late, so she quickly rushed to the office to work. But on her way to work, Mi Rae saw some people queuing at a bakery. Seeing this, Mi Rae became curious and finally approached the crowd. At that moment, she accidentally overheard the people waiting, where they said the bakery's bread was very delicious. However, the bread was made in very limited quantities because the baker made it based on the feelings he couldn't forget about his first love and his past. Therefore, the baker poured his memories into the taste of the bread he made. After learning about this, Mi Rae chose to continue her journey to the office. Upon arriving at the office, Mi Rae was assigned by her boss to write a script about a famous baker whose shop she had just passed by. In addition, she was also asked to persuade the baker to participate in their TV cooking competition program. On the other hand, the baker named Do was making a cake with a beautiful theme. Shortly after, his colleague named Peel soon came and invited him to participate in a cake-making competition on TV. Unfortunately, Do was not interested at all and declined the offer. That evening, Mi Rae visited the bakery and met Do to invite him to collaborate. However, Do immediately rejected her, as he did not want to be involved in any TV programs. After the rejection, Mi Rae chose to go home and find another way to convince Do and then accept her offer. The next morning, Mi Rae came back to the bakery and, with her courage, offered her proposal to Do again. Although Mi Rae was rejected again, she did not give up and was willing to wait until noon in front of the bakery. When Do found out about this, he asked Mi Rae to leave his shop because he was about to leave and close the store. Shortly after, Do actually visited his father's house, who turned out to be a skilled and famous baker. However, his father only made traditional cakes. When Do met his father while bringing the cake he made earlier, his father scolded him instead because he thought that his son had eliminated their ancestral tradition. Do actually knew that his father strongly disagreed with the bread he made, but he chose to leave his father's house to avoid an argument and chose to continue his work as a baker. After leaving his father's house, Do started to consider accepting Mi Rae's offer, as it was to prove to his father that his bread was delicious and worthy of being eaten by many people. That night, Mi Rae was seen walking home, where from behind, Do suddenly appeared and immediately accepted her offer to work together. At first, Mi Rae was surprised by Do's presence, but when she heard her offer accepted, she was very happy. The next day at work, Mi Rae received many compliments for successfully persuading Do to participate in their program. Shortly after, Mi Rae attended a meeting and was assigned to interview Do to gather information about him as a requirement for the program. That night, Mi Rae met Do again at his bakery for the interview. With Mi Rae started asking Do several questions. But when Mi Rae received answers from him, she was slightly surprised when there were some things she knew, as if there were fragments of memories that she remembered. However, Mi Rae pushed that aside to continue asking questions to Do until it was finished. The next day, Do held a meeting with the TV station where Mi Rae worked for the upcoming program. He attended with Peel soon, who had participated in the show before. At that moment, Mi Rae was appointed as a tester and was given bread by both Peel soon and Do. After that, Mi Rae liked the bread made by both of them. However, she felt that the bread made by Do tasted better and seemed to contain memories within it. After the meeting ended, Mi Rae was assigned to accompany the chefs if they needed anything. Sometime later, the competition event began, and many spectators watched the show. There were 3 participants in the competition, namely Do, Peel soon, and a couple from China. When preparing ingredients for Do, Mi Rae collided with a girl named Do Hee, who was the only daughter of the owner of one of the big companies in Korea. At that time, Do Hee fell, so Mi Rae tried to help her. However, Do Hee had another intention because she intentionally fell to exchange the ingredients belonging to Do brought by Mi Rae. After that, Mi Rae prepared the ingredients she brought to Do's table for this competition. Not long after, the event began, and the participants were busy baking bread according to their respective themes. Shortly after, they were all ready with their dishes and then showed them to the camera. After that, the judges began tasting the bread they made one by one. When tasting the bread made by Do, the judges said that the bread he made was very unpleasant and did not meet expectations. In the end, The first round of the competition was won by the couple from China. When the event ended, Do Hee, who had previously been bumped by Mi Rae, met Do Woo and said that Mi Rae accidentally replaced his ingredients, causing his bread to be unpleasant because he wrongly put in the ingredients. Knowing this, Do Woo became upset and decided to return to his shop to calm himself by making bread again. However, when Do Woo was putting the bread into the refrigeration room, the door suddenly locked itself and he was trapped inside. Shortly after, Mi Rae came to Do Woo's location and found him lying helpless inside the refrigeration room. Seeing that, Mi Rae immediately took Do Woo to the room and took care of him as best as she could. Not long after, a man named Patrick, who claimed to be Do Woo's manager, appeared and said the cause of this accident was that the two of them often met. Mi Rae was confused to hear that, but didn't think too much about it. The next morning, when Mi Rae woke up, she didn't see Do Woo in his bed. She immediately panicked slightly and went out to look for him. However, Do Woo had already woken up and looked healthy again. After finding that out, Mi Rae decided to leave for work. While at the office, Mi Rae and her colleagues discussed the next theme they would use for the competition. After some discussion, they decided to use a nostalgia theme. After that, Mi Rae went to see Do Woo and told him that the next theme they would use was nostalgia. She also remembered her hometown bread when she mentioned the nostalgia theme. Upon hearing this, Do Woo asked Mi Rae to accompany him to her hometown to find inspiration, and she agreed. Sometime later, Mi Rae and Do Woo went to her hometown using a motorcycle. When they got there, they immediately visited the bakery she mentioned earlier. When Mi Rae tasted the bread at the bakery, she immediately remembered her childhood memories, while Do Woo studied the texture and taste of the bread as inspiration. After visiting the bakery, they decided to visit Mi Rae's home, which turned out to be a restaurant. At that moment, Mi Rae's mother warmly welcomed Do Woo and invited him to have dinner together. However, the food wasn't ready yet, so Mi Rae and Do Woo chose to take a walk around the house first. The beautiful scenery made Do Woo feel comfortable in Mi Rae's hometown. During the trip, they stopped by a souvenir shop and Do Woo bought Mi Rae something. After some time, they decided to return home and have dinner together. When they were about to eat, suddenly visitors arrived who turned out to be Peel Soon and Do Hee, where they claimed to have come there for a date. In the end, Peel Soon and Do Hee ended up staying overnight at Mi Rae's house because Peel Soon's car was unexpectedly broken down. A few days later, Do Woo had returned to his baker, where his father came to visit him unexpectedly. Do Woo immediately made bread and hoped his father would taste it even just a little. However, his father scolded him again and slammed the bread he had made. After that, his father left, and Mi Rae, who happened to witness the incident, immediately approached Do Woo and helped clean up the scattered bread. Mi Rae even tasted one of the pieces of bread. Unexpectedly, Mi Rae began to remember memories of her past with a man who turned out to resemble Do Woo. After that, Mi Rae immediately asked for an explanation from Do Woo because she thought they must have met before. But upon hearing her question, Do Woo remained silent. After that incident, they still met often, although they didn't talk to each other much because Do Woo seemed to avoid Mi Rae. Sometime later, the eagerly awaited second round of the competition soon began. However, this time the cakes made by the participants were tasted by children because they were considered to be more honest in giving opinions. When the children had tasted everything, they had to choose among the cakes from the participants that tasted the best. Unexpectedly, the second round of the competition was won by Do Woo because his cake was inspired by the bread in Mi Rae's hometown, which made Mi Rae reminisce about her childhood. After that, the judges immediately announced that the theme for the final round would be traditional bread. Upon hearing this, Do Woo was immediately surprised because he remembered his father, who was a famous traditional bread maker. As time passed, Do Woo began to practice making traditional bread for the next competition. At the same time, he aimed to prove to his father that he could also make traditional bread. On the other hand, Mi Rae was busy with meetings, but she kept thinking about Do Woo and their past relationship. Eventually, Mi Rae decided to meet Do Woo at his bakery. At that moment, she saw Do Woo making two cakes that he displayed in the showcase, cakes that seemed familiar to her. As Mi Rae was about to taste them, suddenly Patrick arrived and forbade Mi Rae from doing so. He explained that if Mi Rae tasted the cakes, her bitter memories would resurface. Shortly after, a strange woman arrived and scolded Patrick, causing a slight commotion. At that moment, Mi Rae took advantage of the situation to taste the cakes. And when she ate the cake, her memories returned, and Mi Rae regretted recalling them. Not long after, the final round of the competition began, and Do Woo was surprised to find out that this time the judge was his own father. However, Do Woo remained focused and careful as the competition started. After a while, the participants had finished their dishes, and Do Woo's father and the other judges stepped forward to taste the participants' dishes. Upon finishing tasting everything, one of the judges remarked that the taste of the bread made by Peel-soon and Do Woo was very similar, and he was sure that one of them had stolen the recipe. Hearing this, everyone seemed panicked. Surprisingly, Do Woo's father stepped forward and admitted that he had stolen someone else's recipe, which had made him famous. The people there were shocked to hear this confession, and Do Woo's father immediately became the center of heated discussion. After that, Do Woo approached his father when the competition was over. His father explained that it was better for him to fall than for Do Woo, who was just starting his career. His father also recognized Do Woo's talent after he won the previous competition, and finally gave his blessing for Do Woo to pursue his own path. Hearing this, Do Woo was touched and thanked his father. On the other hand, Mi Rae was approached by a man who claimed to know her from when she was abroad. Although Mi Rae didn't remember him, the man was convinced that she was his former friend. Shortly after, Mi Rae felt curious and immediately searched for files in her closet when she returned home. She tried to contact her friend who had been her roommate abroad, as the man who met her earlier had said. When she contacted this friend, it turned out the friend was still there and even remembered Mi Rae to this day. Moreover, Mi Rae also found a photo of herself with her friend from abroad. Along with this, Mi Rae remembered her past with Do Woo. She immediately looked behind the wall, and there were photos of herself with Do Woo looking very close, as well as photos of her friends from abroad. After that, all of her memories had returned. In the past, when Mi Rae studied abroad, she met Do Woo and they also had a relationship. But later, Mi Rae had to return to Korea, while Do Woo continued to study abroad. At that parting moment, Mi Rae said she would wait for Do Woo to come back. However, Do Woo surprisingly asked to end their relationship. At that moment, Do Woo explained that when they were in a relationship, there were always bad things between them. After saying that, he chose to leave. However, Mi Rae didn't accept that, then demanded an explanation from Do Woo. But when she was about to follow him, from another direction there was a speeding car. Seeing this, Do Woo immediately saved Mi Rae, but the car ended up hitting both of them, leaving them unconscious. After some time, Do Woo woke up first and suddenly Patrick appeared who turned out to be an angel. He explained that the only way for Mi Rae to wake up was to erase her memory, so that both of them would be saved. Do Woo immediately chose that option, so Mi Rae didn't remember anything about him from then on. In the present, Mi Rae remembers everything and she immediately approaches Do Woo for an explanation. However, Do Woo doesn't say anything and repeats that if they are together continue their relationship, then one of them will surely be in danger. After knowing this, Mi Rae continues her life, but with a sense of emptiness. While working at the office, Mi Rae receives a phone call from Do Hee, asking her to come to a studio room immediately. However, when Mi Rae arrived there, she did not find Do Hee. But she was actually trapped by Do Hee after she was crushed by a pile of boxes. Do Hee did these because she liked Do Woo from the start. In fact, she only approached Peel-soon just to be able to interact with Do Woo. However, when she saw the closeness between Mi Rae and Do Woo, Do Hee became jealous and started planning everything to keep Mi Rae away from Do Woo. On the other hand, Mi Rae panicked and didn't know what to do. Eventually, she called Do Woo and asked him to come and save her. In the end, Do Woo came and pulled her out of the pile of boxes. But when Do Woo was about to leave, he was hit by a large object that made him unconscious. At that moment, Patrick suddenly appeared and revealed his true identity to Mi Rae. Patrick then made a condition that if Mi Rae wanted Do Woo to wake up again, first they wouldn't recognize each other anymore. In the end, Mi Rae finally agreed to it, so that Do Woo could wake up again. However, she chose to leave before Do Woo woke up. Sometime later, Mi Rae carries on with her job calmly. Until one day, there's a client who wants to collaborate with her to create a TV program. When Mi Rae meets them, it turns out the client is Do-woo, and he doesn't remember Mi Rae. After that, they begin the interview process, but now it's Do-woo who wants to interview Mi Rae. As he poses some questions, Mi Rae experiences déjà vu. However, Mi Rae chooses to stay silent, so that Do-woo can move on, even though he won't remember her. And so, the story ends. Moral lesson from the story: even if your bread tastes like heartbreak, don't forget to bring extra ingredients to avoid turning it into a piece of memories. And remember, never trust someone who falls in front of a bakery queue. They might just be there to steal your dough.